what's up? It's Grace, and today I'm going to be doing my September wrap-up. I read 7 books, I'm pretty sure, this month, and then half of a book, which I will talk about at the end. So let's just jump right into it, because I loved everything I read. The first book I read most of it in August, so it's a crossover book, and that is Blue Lily, Lily Blue by Maggie Stiefvater, which is the 3rd book in the Raven cycle. And shocker, it was perfect. Wonderful. I would say that, I don't know if I like the Dream Thieves better or this better. I think I may have loved the Dream Thieves a little bit better, but this was still fantastic. Guys, if you have not picked up this series, please do, because it's like phenomenal. It's so good. And I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. So the next book I read was The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J Maas, which is the novellas to the Throne of Glass series. And I freaking loved this so much. I got to see an entirely different side of Celaena and kind of just how she came to be what she was. And even though it was like super tragic and kind of horrible, it was still really interesting getting to know her on a different level and all these characters that we never met, and like, you know, just really getting the backstory on her character, which was very educational for her character. And I freaking love this. I'm so glad that I read this before I read Queen of Shadows, because a lot of what happens in this book is mentioned in Queen of Shadows, along with characters that are in Queen of Shadows were in this. And okay, I'm gonna come back on this book when I talk about Queen of Shadows, but I gave this book 4.5 stars, and I definitely recommend that you read this probably before you read, like if you haven't even read this series at all, I would say just read the books in publication order. But definitely read this before you read Queen of Shadows, because it gives you a lot of insight. So the next book I read was obviously Queen of Shadows by Sarah J Maas, which is the 4th, I don't know if you can call it the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series, and it is my favorite. And I'm not going to talk a lot because I know that a lot of hype is surrounding it, and I do not want to, like, I don't know, burn you guys out with this book. But it was phenomenal. I did have problems with it, like, don't get me wrong, it wasn't perfect, but it was like imperfectly perfect in my eyes. I loved the majority of everything in this book, but I will talk about what I didn't like or didn't really understand, and that is the inconsistency of characters. Like, their personalities are different. Like, I don't even understand how it's the same person. I get character development, I get all that, but then there's some times where you're like, wait, is that just like a whole nother person with the face of that character? So for example, Chaol and Rowan, what? Like, Chaol is completely different. He's such an a-hole, I don't like him, but I understand him in a way. And then Rowan, I love his character, like I do, but he's totally completely different from Heir of Fire. And I understand kind of the change, but not the extreme of what it was. And also, I do not get the romance in these books. Like, I don't understand, like, Rowan and Celaena, I love both of their characters, but I do not like them romantically for each other, and that's kind of happening in this book, you could say. And I'm just really confused because I don't see it, like, at all. But other than that, you guys, like, this book was fantastic. My favorite character was Lysandra, and you meet Lysandra in this book, and she's horrible. But then you get more of a perspective on her in this book, and she was so freaking badass, and I loved her so much, because it just shows you that there's a lot more than meets the eye with some characters, and it was just phenomenal. Great villains in this book, in the sense that I absolutely hated them. And lots of shock in this book. It's fantastic, and I'm gonna stop talking about it, but I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And the next books I read were Dream Fever and Shadow Fever by Karen Marie Moning, which is the 4th and 5th book in the Fever series. And I was pretty nervous to pick up the 4th book because I didn't really like how the 3rd book ended. I mean, it just was like, what? And it put kind of a bad taste in my mouth, but I was very curious on how it was going to be solved and what was going to go on. And in the beginning of this book, I was just like, what? Like, it definitely gave me like the shock value, but I don't know if I necessarily liked how it was dealt with. I wanted it to happen kind of in a different way, but it's alright. And these books are so fun to read, guys. They're just super, I wouldn't say quick reads because they are pretty chunky, but I gave this one, I think I gave both of these 4.5 stars. And I loved how it ended because there were a lot of twists and turns that I didn't see coming. And it was just pretty, like, epic. And I love fae and fairies, anything that has to do with, like, kind of that, like, mythology. I love it. And it's set in Dublin, Ireland, which is awesome. So yes, I really enjoyed this series. I did have problems with it, like sometimes the back and forth between the main character Mac and Jericho was kind of annoying because it was just like it went on for so long. Like even in the 5th book, they still like had no trust whatsoever in each other, which is understandable, but still it was frustrating. But other than that, I really enjoyed this series. I completed it, well, I completed this one because I know that there's other books that follow different characters. I don't know if I'm gonna continue on with that one. I'm undecided with that. But again, I gave these 4.5 stars and they were very fun. So the next book I read was Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder, which I've been wanting to read for quite a while. And I was a little bit nervous, but very excited because I heard that this was like the inspiration for the Throne of Glass series, which I don't know if that's fact, but I've heard people say that. So I was scared to be like, what if they're so similar that I like Throne of Glass a little bit less because this was published first and I was scared, but after I read it I was like, yeah, there were some parallels, but not too much so that I didn't enjoy both of the books. But so this follows a young girl named Yelena, and she's been in prison for a while and she's about to be executed for murder, but she's given the choice to be a poison tester for the commander. So she opts for that, and like the story takes off from there. This was such a quick read, super entertaining. So I'll get on to what I like about this book. I really loved our main character, Yelena. She was very strong, but she worked for being strong. Like, she trained and she really wanted it. She didn't, you know, start off super badass. She like worked for it, and you can tell that she, you know, put a lot of effort into wanting to just be the best person that she could be, both like physically and mentally. And then I really loved the other main character, Valak, who is the head or the chief of security, and he's like 34 I think, and she's 18, so there's like an age gap there, but it's realistically speaking for like this time. And so I really thought like that was pretty refreshing, and I didn't know if I was gonna like Valak, but until like 100 pages in I was like, I really like this guy because he was pretty like tough on her, but also super sarcastic and funny and intelligent. I love intelligent guys, and he reminded me of Sherlock in the way that he loved to challenge himself even if the circumstances were bad, and he was just a very interesting character. That there was like a lot to him. And another thing I really liked was the slow burning romance. It was very slow burning, but then at the end it just kind of happened, stuff happened so fast that I was like, whoa, slow it down a little bit. So that kind of threw me off. And also there's like not a lot of world building. Maybe you'll get them in the next, or get the world building in the next 2 books, but there wasn't a lot in this book, and I was kind of confused on like how the world, you know, came to be. There was some storyline behind it, but not enough to where I was like comfortable with knowing the entirety of the world. But other than that, I really enjoyed this. I will be continuing on, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, so the next book that I read, I'm going to try to get through this review without cheering up, but it was just, guys, this book, so beautiful. And that is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. And this, or Moyes, I'm not sure quite how to pronounce her last name. But this follows a young woman. She's 26, her name's Louisa, and she's lived kind of a pretty boring life. She's never kind of wanted to be anything extraordinary. You know, she's kind of just comfortable with being, you know, just content, like just not doing anything, you know, kind of just living life day to day. And one day she loses her job, so she tries to find another job, and she finds a job being a caregiver for a man who is a paraplegic, which meaning he suffered from a very bad spinal cord injury, which resulted in him having no access to his body from the neck down. He has some kind of movement in his hands, but other than that, not really. And Will has, you know, before he got his injury, he was very active, and he loved, like, you know, skiing. He was just a very active man, and just it was a big, huge part of his life. So obviously that's horrible that, you know, he's stuck in a wheelchair with no access to anything when he lived kind of this extraordinary life before. And so it's them meeting, and they're so opposites, and it's just such an entirely beautiful story that just makes you appreciate things that you never even think about, like, you know, just turning over in bed and just being able to not rely on other people to do things for you, just like to put your shoes on and stuff like that. And Louisa's character, like, I was just like, yeah, her character's fun, you know, but then in the story there's a whole another element that's thrown to her character that really was just gave a lot to her character, and a lot of she wasn't like she was for no reason, you know. And so it was just so beautiful. And to explain this book, it was just so beautifully, wonderfully tragic, and I loved it so much. I know that there's going to be a movie, and Emilia Clarke is going to play Louisa, and then oh my god, what's his name? The guy who plays Finnick Odair in The Hunger Games is going to play Will, which is going to be awesome, and I'm so that movie is a movie that I'm just actually extremely excited to see. So yes, I love this book, so obviously I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I will recommend this to anyone. I forgot to mention how funny this book was. Like, along with it, yeah, it's sad, but also it's hysterical. Like, there's this one part where she first meets Will and Will does something, and I was hysterically laughing in my bed for so long, and it's just hilarious. So, you know, it's not all sad, it's quite uplifting, and so yes, I just wanted to mention that. The book that I'm in the middle of right now is Slasher Girls and Monster Boys by a whole bunch of YA authors, and this is a bunch of horror thriller stories, so I'm having a grand time with this. It is scary, it's perfect, and it's these stories are inspired by other things. Like the first story, let me try and find it. Hold on one second, just give me a minute. Okay, so the first story is inspired by the 1954 film Rear Window and the 1963 film The Birds. So all these short horror thriller stories are inspired by different things, which makes it really interesting. Like the second story is inspired by Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. And it's just really interesting, along with being terrifying and creepy. So yes, I'm having a great time, and I will be reading this book throughout October. So those were all the books that I read in September. I obviously had a very wonderful reading month with like loving everything that I read. I read, yeah, 3 5-star books, so that being Lily Blue, Queen of Shadows, and Me Before You. And I love all of those, but like in different ways. I don't really have a favorite of the month, but like Me Before You was fan-freaking-tastic. So I would maybe go with that, but like I loved it in a different way than I loved Queen of Shadows and Blue Lily Blue. So go ahead, and if you want to, comment down below and tell me your favorite read of the month, because I'm interested in knowing that. And thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in my next video. Bye.